Welcome back to Mice TV, coming to you live from Da Nang, Vietnam at the CAKE and PIE Expo. This is our third and last broadcast for the Expo, and we've had a great time coming to you live with all of the optometry and ophthalmology news from the show. We've still got more coming up over the next 60 minutes, so please stay tuned. First, we have our NTOD talk show. Matt Young will be talking to Dr. Hui Tran about myopia control with low-dose atropine. Dottie Fidel will also be on tap. She'll be talking about scleral lenses and how they might actually impact dry eye management. Yeah. We also have Dr. Ken Fong. He'll be talking about how to grow your retina practice. So if you're in the vitreoretinal space, this is the segment for you. And our last interview will be Dr. Kao Enthakur. We'll be talking all about glaucoma, and there's more than topical drops to glaucoma management. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Undergone keratoplasty from 15 to 31% will develop astigmatism, irregular astigmatism up to 5 diopters. These patients will not have any success with soft contact lenses or corneal lenses. They need scleral lenses. They need to function. So how to do with these lenses? Here, several studies have shown that fitting scleral lenses in patients with transplant had some success. Only 6% of eyes has demonstrated periodic episodes, not constant periods of corneal edema. And Severisky suggested that to use hypertonic saline when edema occurs and to accelerate the recovery of the edema. And if edema persists, just use the hypertonic saline during scleral lens wear into the fluid reservoir. This will help. So here is my case from Spain. I have several cases from around the world, and this was from Spain. I was surprised from having a patient from Spain because I know very...
Welcome back to Mice TV for the third and final broadcast from Da Nang, Vietnam at the CAKE and PIE Expo 2.0. We are back with our very own Matt Young, CEO of Media Mice, for a conversation with Dr. Hui about one of the most exciting developments in the fight against myopia, atropine sulfate eye drops.
Well, thanks, Matt, and thanks, Dr. Hui. Thanks for joining me on the show today. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about myopia and the latest with atropine sulfate topical eye drops for childhood myopia. These are being launched in Vietnam as Myatro. Now, so the cat is out of the bag, and with the myopia epidemic, it is now one of the hottest topics in eye care. What are some of the major reasons for the spread of myopia?
Yeah, first of all, thanks you all to having me, and thanks Mice Media for having me today. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. The rise of myopia prevalence is now all around the world, especially in Asia, Southeast Asia. And myopia is suggested to result from a complex multifactorial interplay especially between the genetic factors and environmental factors. And especially, I think that one of the most important environmental factors include the significant lack of outdoors activities and the use of so much of digital handheld screen now. For example, the iPad, iPhone, there's too much for the kid now. So as soon as the kids tend to use more the digital screen, they tend to significantly reduce the time outdoors. But we all know now there's so many evidence proven that for every day, if we can increase the time outdoor over than 2 hours per day, this is a protective factors to protect the kids from developing myopia.
That's fascinating. Well, why do you think children in particular are seeing an alarming increase in myopia?
In general, myopia mainly happens in the young age, and there's so many evidence now showing that the age of onset of myopia in the children tend to be younger than before. And then the myopia will progress over years, and before reaching the stability at the years of about 16 to 18 years old. But there are still some numbers about like up to 10% of the population that still have the progression of myopia even after 18 years old. So then the kids needs to be followed up over time. And the pace of progression has been suggested to be faster at the younger age than the older age.
So, Dr. Hui, what lifestyle and environmental factors in the lives of children are contributing to the rise in pediatric myopia?
I think that the two most common causes, like I did mention above this, the first is the significant lack of times outdoor, and because that especially in the Asia countries like us, we tend to live in a small house, not so much time for the kids to go outdoor, and especially we just went through the 2 hard year of COVID, with so much of lockdown restriction and so much of social distancing restriction. So then the kids has to move from studying at school to working online. Therefore, they tend to have more time on the screen time. But you know that recently even the WHO also have a report to suggest just have a limit time for the screen time for the kids for the certain age groups.
You know, COVID presented its own unique challenges to the myopia mess, and post-COVID is getting even worse for myopia, we hear. What effects from COVID do you think are accelerating the advance of myopia?
Yes, in fact, there are so many publications over the last years showing that the kids tend to progress myopia much faster than before. I think that the two most important factors are because that the kids has a significant lack of time outdoors due to the lockdown restriction in many countries. Even that in Vietnam is like the total lockdown for over 2 months during the COVID, and like the not the total, a partial lockdown for another 3 months. So that's why, and then the kids has to move from working at the school to working online and studying online. And then some of the kids also, because that for the handheld screen, the screen is smaller, and then the kids needs to move it closer to their eyes, and it could also affect the progression.
Well, fortunately, we're seeing a lot of new drugs come onto the market, and the most promising is atropine sulfate, marketed in Vietnam as Myatro. The most famous studies on this are the LAMP and ATOM studies, and both are studies with atropine sulfate. So let's take a look at the LAMP study first. Now, in this study, we found this chart showing change in axial length at varying levels of atropine. So what stands out for you here?
I think that there are two great studies showing about the information about the low concentration atropine. The first one has to be the ATOM one. But then because with the development of myopia control treatment now, all the clinicians tend to move towards the low concentration atropine. Let's say, so therefore, LAMP studies show much more update data on the clinical trials and in the clinical practice for the clinicians like us. For LAMP study, this is the first ever randomized control trial for the use of 3 different concentration of atropine, 0.01, 0.025, and 0.05. This is 2 years. This is a 2 years data, but we can see that it was dose dependent. For the blue lines is the progression of the axial length of from 0.05, which is the less progression, and the red one is for 0.025, and the yellow one is for the 0.01, and the gray one is for control group. But for the second year, you can see that the gray one, when they switch over, because that the switch over group, it means that so after the first year of control with no treatment, only a placebo, it was switched to the 0.05. You can see that a significant effect of the low concentration at 0.05%.
Now I hear we have another chart here, also from the LAMP study. Now, this is all in a different light. We've got spherical equivalent in this one, so more interesting things going on, don't you think, Dr. Hui?
Yeah, interesting things is is correlate with the previous chart because this one is a spherical equivalent for the prescription, and the previous one is for the axial elongation. This one also showed the significant dose-dependent effect. So lower the dose, the effect is less, and higher the dose for 0.05, you can see that the progression over 2 years is only about half of diopters. It's still good enough and it's so great for the kids.
Now let's talk a little bit more about your experience with atropine sulfate myatro. Can you share some of your clinical experience with the drug?
So I feel so good for the clinic, for the market of Vietnam, and for the myopia control treatment in Vietnam, because now we have all the low concentration, let's say 0.01, 0.025, and 0.05. Many choice for the kids for better treatment for them. But then for our team conduct a clinical trial in Ho Chi Minh City using 0.01, 0.02, and 0.03%. It showed that less than 0.03%, the kids tend to have tolerable side effect. But more than that, the kids may not tolerate the side effect of the use of atropine. But in fact, the kids tend to have a large reserve of compensation. The better you have a good communication to the caregivers and to the parents, and the better that you can talk to them, explain to them how the treatment can go, and then they can understand and they can cooperate with you, and even that the kids also can adapt up to 0.05% with no issue, with no need of some kind of photochromatic lens or progressive glasses.
Well, I just need to interrupt because we're about ready to go to a video, but I have really good news for the Vietnamese market. Atropine eye drops are being marketed as Myatro, and let's take a look at their newest advertising spot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, really, really great stuff there from Matt Young and Dr. Hui. Dr. Hui, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
The future definitely looks a lot brighter and clearer for children with myopia in Vietnam.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Up next, we have an interview with Matt Young and Dr. Ivo Ferreira of Mexico. Dr. Ferreira runs a program in Mexico called Ophthalmo University, and he's going to talk about simulation via virtual reality in ophthalmology. Let's roll that clip.
Dr. Ivo Ferreira, welcome to the program.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Matt.
And I got to say, Ivo, is that background there, is that a virtual background, or are we talking about the real deal?
What do you think? Looks like virtual, right?
That's right, but I guess you can move equipment around at will.
Yeah, exactly. What we want here is to do an analogy what flying pilots are doing. We want to deconstruct surgery. We want to teach people not only about motor skills that they need to master in the operating room, but also cognitive skills and how to make decisions and problem solving. You know, we have a new approach on how to teach surgical skills.
Could we switch to another camera angle? I know that even I can maybe see you at another angle. Okay, so when we're at this angle, Ivo, what is this for here?
You can see in YouTube, for example, an amazing surgery from Ike Ahmed, and you're seeing everything going amazing in the anterior chamber, but you're not seeing the biomechanics of the hands. That's why we have two cameras.
Can you tell me overall, Ivo, what really is the importance of simulation in cataract surgery training?
After I did my fellowship, that they had a huge volume of surgery, the first virtual simulator came, to my big institution. And I slowly started to understand how I was changing. What is that actually I was learning by being a surgeon and how much we can learn in a simulated environment. So I started to do a master's degree in medical education with simulation. I strongly believe now that you can train almost an 80% of what a surgeon can learn in an operating room, but in a simulated environment.
Now, wet lab training, simulation training, is this all synonymous or are there differences?
Right here, you are in an environment in where the real machines you're going to use in the operating room are present. So you use an artificial eye because you're getting used to the handpiece you're going to use, the sounds that the machine are going to use, the actual microscope you're going to use. And that's great because you get familiar with what you're going to use. But in another room, we have the virtual reality simulation. You can do as many repetitions as you want. You get objective feedback, and you also get something that's called contextual interference. So what I do is I change the scenario so you learn how to think in surgery. So yes, they're complement each other, but they're different.
Now, what are some of the challenges of simulation in the modern environment, would you say?
The first challenge is somebody is going to always talk about price. You know, they're going to say the simulator is expensive. But if you really think it in a big picture, in an entire context, is the best investment you can do. But the second challenge is to have a mentor next to it. This is a machine that, you know, will help you a lot, but you truly need a dedicated mentor, somebody who's well-trained in how to transfer knowledge from one human being to the other. And that's what I'm seeing around the world, that there is not enough mentors with a simulator next to them.
Does simulation minimize trainees' learning curves by chance as well in the operating room?
Actually, what simulation does is reshapes completely the learning curve. What we do here is we take you to this new concept that is called surgical readiness. You understand everything you need to learn before you get to the operating room. And when you get to the operating room, there's still things to learn. In this case, for example, in phaco emulsification, you know how to use your 2 feet, your 2 hands working together, seeing in 3D working without seeing your hands. There is so many things you learn before you get to the operating room.
Okay, so I see a few Alcon products in the background there. But overall, can you summarize the devices that are available in the market for simulation?
In this case, we're using Ingenuity from Alcon, but you can use Artevo. The Artevo has an OCT with augmented reality, some guiding. That's very important to learn. You use a microscope, you use any phaco machine. Also, for example, in this case, we're using the latest technology in phaco machines. We are also using Varion right there, so it will give you augmented reality in the eye so you can do a perfect capsular rhexis.
Well, meanwhile, Ivo, can you talk more about artificial eyes for these circumstances?
I'm very excited because of this. Look, let me show it to you. The progression kit has only one purpose. It's for somebody to purchase it, let's say in Vietnam, and he will be able to train by himself. He's going to have the structure, a mentor with many, many videos, and then he's going to have 2 calls with a mentor. So he can, you know, purchase this kit, go to an operating room in his own hospital and have somebody who will guide him. You have the head of the patient here, Cordel Romano. Then you have a holder for the eye. And then what you do is you just purchase anterior segments and cataracts. You're basically buying something you're can use for life, and then you're just purchasing, you know, different type of cataracts and anterior segments so you can train a lot.
You know, in my sort of lay mind, I think, oh, they must just be used so, you know, the beginning surgeons don't mess up, you know, on a patient's eye. But I'm sure there must be much more to it than that. So what really is at the heart of using eye models to simulate eye surgery?
Simulation is not only for beginners. Simulation can be for example, for a glaucoma surgeon who wants to put MIGS, but also, let's say there is a cataract surgeon that wants to start doing 3-piece IOL suture to sclera. You can do this here. You can relax, you can understand the sutures, your hand positioning. So even for advanced techniques, when you simulate 10, 20, 30 of them, and then you go to the operating room, it's much easier to perform. So there is room for not only novice, but also for expert surgeon simulation.
Well, I feel like your setup is so advanced there, Ivo. I'm here in Vietnam, and I would be surprised if there were anything like this in our city here in Da Nang. But are these types of setups possible internationally, and do you think there's a future for them?
What you can find around the world is, in this case, and again, I don't have any conflict of interest, but I know that Alcon is doing Alcon Experience Centers all around the world. You have one in Barcelona, you have one in Tokyo, Japan. There is one in Sao Paulo. You don't need an ingenuity to have a good setting in order to teach. It's good because it's an immersive experience and everybody's just looking what's going on. With a good microscope and a phaco machine, you can replicate this in almost every country in the world.
That's interesting. So it sounds like from the commercial point of view, there would be an incentive for them to, provide an experience with their equipment, but maybe in private settings, it's still maybe difficult to find these types of setups around the world, although I could see they're very valuable.
Again, the cost of this technology is high. Not only the cost to purchase it, but the cost, for example, to have, the cassette, to have the BSS, to have the instruments, to have the viscoelastics. I think for any institution that has high volume and residents, there is nothing better than train your surgeons the best way possible.
Besides cataract surgery training, how could simulation also benefit other subspecialties like glaucoma and retina?
In refractive surgery, we do a lot of simulation. The impact of simulation in the learning curve of a retina surgeon is even bigger than in cataract, because retina has so many little details and visualization, and the distances are so different. We're doing strabism surgery, and since you're talking about glaucoma, we can do almost all the procedures in glaucoma, but especially now, you can train mix. So I think that's very powerful because, there's many glaucoma surgeons who are not familiar with mix. They can come here. We have an amazing model for them, and they can put 10, 20, 30 mix. How do you put your microscope? How is the technique to visualize the angle? I could tell you that we're simulating almost every single surgery in ophthalmology.
Well, Ivo, thanks so much for joining us here on Mice TV. We're so glad to see your setup. It's just extraordinary what you're doing there, both in reality and virtual reality. So we're pleased that you can share something about that with our region here in Asia Pacific and beyond.
I'm so happy, and the way you guys communicate ophthalmology is something we need. And also, I want to thank you for the space to talk about this, that I believe is the future, is the present and the future. And we need more people to get engaged in this area.
Welcome back to Mice TV, coming to you live from the CAKE and PIE Expo in Da Nang, Vietnam. Our next guest is Dr. Dottie Fidel. She's a clinical scientist at the Center for Ocular Research, well known as CORE. She has more than 20 years of experience, and she's internationally recognized as a key opinion leader in the industry. Dr. Fidel runs an optometry practice specializing in contact lenses in Italy, where she personally designs and fits customized scleral lenses. She's here to talk about scleral lenses and dry eye today. Let's welcome her to the show. Thank you for being here, Dr. Fidel.
Thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yes. And how are you doing today? How long have you been in Vietnam?
In 3 days. This is my third day, and I am so excited. I love Vietnam.
Oh,
yeah.
So I know today we finally got some sunny weather. I know the weather's been a little bit rainy the past few days. Were you able to visit any of maybe the attractions or the sites?
Very little, because I was involved here in the meeting. I had different meetings, but yeah, the little I saw, I just love it. I love the food.
So do I. What has been your favorite so far?
Oh, I don't know the name, so please don't. The balls. I love the balls, the crispy balls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know what their names.
It's not Bun Cha, is it?
Bun Cha Hanoi has that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we could go on about food all day.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. So let's talk about scleral lenses. What makes these different from your standard contact lens?
Well, first of all, the material of the lens is rigid and the large diameter of the lens. So the combination of both rigid lens and large diameter make them unique because they touch only the conjunctiva of the ocular surface, not the cornea.
Okay.
The cornea is the most sensitive tissue in the whole body. If you have only one eyelash in your eye, you will feel it because the cornea is very, very sensitive. If you will have it on your skin, you will not feel it. So by touching the cornea, the lens will be felt by the patient. The scleral lens will vault over the cornea and touch on the conjunctiva, which is very less sensitive. So it provides comfort, and just because of the rigid material, the lens will not conform to the cornea. So it will vault it, and there will be a space between the lens and the cornea, and this space will be filled with fluid reservoir.
Okay.
This fluid reservoir will correct the irregularities of the cornea and also will moisten and lubricate the ocular surface during all time. So that's why dry eye and ocular surface disease may have a lot of benefit from scleral lenses.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, so you mentioned dry eye. What types of patients can really benefit most from these types of lenses?
Well, all patients, also high myopia or astigmatism. My husband has normal cornea, but he is presbyopic, so he needs some multifocal lens for near vision, and he was very unhappy with soft contact lenses because of unstable vision.
Okay.
And tried to for him scleral lenses with multifocal optic, and he loved it. So all patients can benefit from scleral lenses, but there are two main categories.
Okay.
Keratoconic patients,
Okay.
because of the high irregularities, and especially advanced keratoconus who have the only option keratoplasty. So now scleral lenses, just because they can vault over the cornea.
It has that room where the cornea is steepening.
Yes.
There's room for the cornea to be there.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we can make
Right.
them high because we are landing on the conjunctiva, so they can benefit from it, avoiding undergoing keratoplasty.
And that seems like something that you would want to do. You don't want to have a major surgery if you don't have
Absolutely
to.
not.
You
Also
can correct it with
because-
a lens.
Yeah. Also because keratoplasty will not ensure you a good vision or a success of the keratoplasty. The graft may fail. You may reject the graft, and after graft, up to 51% of patients will need corrections. And this
Right.
correction, most of the time, will be scleral lenses. So it's better to keep the things simple and fill them before and avoiding keratoplasty, because you will complicate the fitting after.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the second category, so the first category, keratoconus, and especially advanced one. The second one, ocular surface disease and dry eye.
Very good.
So it sounds like it has no weaknesses, but what are some of the downsides or maybe complications associated with scleral lenses? Is it for everybody, or?
Yes, it is for everybody. The main thing is, the main complication, it's not complication, the main difficulty in these lenses is handling.
Okay.
Because they are large, you need to open the eye very wide to apply the lenses on the eye. So, and also removing. So for this, scleral lenses need to be educated. So the patient need to be educated very well on how to apply and remove the lenses. And the time for education is crucial in these cases. You will resolve many problems due to the handling, but there are different complications like air bubbles, just because of the application technique was not optimal. And other complications, midday fogging, so the accumulation of debris behind the lens.
Okay.
This is unique to scleral lenses. So we may have these complications with soft contact lenses and also corneal lenses, but because of the renewal of the tear behind the lenses, of the tear exchange behind these two lenses, we don't see them. Scleral lenses seal the fluid behind the lens. So whatever the eye is producing, it will be entrapped behind the lens. Ocular surface diseases and dry eye are more prone to develop these debris behind the lenses. But now we have so many options to resolve these problems from the fitting design, so just changing the design, and also we have new solutions to fill the lenses with. And these solutions has nutrients. They have electrolyte. So there is at least one study lately showing that using this new solution will reduce midday fogging.
Now, is that in essence almost making the scleral lens a drug delivery device?
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
This is is already available, and it will be the future of scleral lenses.
No, that's amazing. Now let's talk about, we talk about fitting these lenses. You know, you have the standard contact lens exam. How does fitting scleral lenses, how does that differ? Is it more complicated, and are there worldwide standards, or does this vary by country?
So there are standards, not too much complicated. Who is used to fit corneal lenses, the process is likely similar. So you need to understand the topography of the sclera in this case, because you are fitting on the sclera. However, there are two main fitting process. The process in fitting with a diagnostic set. So you have lenses, you put these lenses on the eye, and you assess the fitting of these lenses on the eye, and you make the changes. Or you take the scans and you do an empirical fitting. So you will order the first lens for the patient's customized one. Once you will have this lens, you will apply it, and then you will make some very small changes. So you will gain time, you will reduce chair time, and you will reduce the lens reordered.
Okay.
So two main process to fit scleral lenses.
Okay. Now, I know that there are a few misconceptions when it comes to scleral lenses as well. You know, I think it's rumored that maybe they're not as comfortable, or maybe they cost more, but it seems to me that if you have some of these conditions, the benefits kind of outweigh any of that. Can you address some of those misconceptions that people might have?
Yes, there are so many misconceptions about scleral lenses. So for keratoconic patients, ocular surface diseases, they would pay whatever it costs to have some release and to have good vision. So this misconception may be related to patients who may have other typology of contact lenses, like soft contact lenses, astigmatism, or multifocal lenses. However, the scleral lens will last between 1 to 2 years.
Oh, wow. So you're not replacing them every single day?
No.
Okay.
So if you do the calculation of your spending for soft contact lenses,
I know how much I spend each year on soft contact
for 2
lenses.
years, you will see. So maybe with lenses, you will reduce the cost. So
Okay. All right. So maybe, it actually saves you some money.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's great. Is there anything else, any other final messages that you would like to share with our audience before we sign off for this segment?
So come to Vietnam.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so this is regarding Vietnam. I was so excited. I'm moving in 10 days, actually. In 31st of August, I'm moving to Canada. But I definitely wanted to come in person to Vietnam because I love it as a country. Now seeing it, I definitely don't have other options, just ask a practitioner in their country and investigate if they can do some customized lenses, if they have different problems with their eyes. So there is a solution for every condition.
That's right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Fidel, for joining us. And up next, we have Optometry, another hot video from you from Dr. Pak Song Woon. He's the current president of the Asia Optometric Congress, and he has a wealth of knowledge on the ins and outs of practicing optometry in Asia. So if you're a young optometrist starting out, or even if you have an established practice and are looking for tips to improve or enhance your business, this is a must-watch. Let's roll the video.
Hey, Pak Seong, nice to see you again. And it was great catching up with you at your clinic in KL last week.
Thank you so much, Matt, for coming and visiting. It's good, so good to see you in person.
Oh, absolutely. And, I'm really glad I got to see that clinic vision space optometrist in action. And I figured, that would be a great topic for us to talk about today for young optometrists who are looking to strike out on their own.
Being an optometrist, you own your own practice, you have a freedom to do pretty much whatever you want, your dreams, your hopes, and so on, and you're able to learn a lot by adapting best practices all around the world.
Well, so what was it like branching out and starting your own practice?
Starting up on my own was scary. As you know, we don't learn the business of optometry in our optometry school. And you're also managing your finances, because you're really trying to be very prudent to make every dollar count. And because you do not have so much of it, it forces you to do things that you normally won't do. I went around the neighborhood, just get to know the neighbors better, even though that was not, I was kind of an introvert, but yet got to know the neighborhood, purchase things from them, get to know them, introduce them, visiting the ophthalmologists. None of this, which was what I would do if I've not started out my own practice. The more I do it, the more I felt comfortable, the more I felt, hey, I can do this,
I agree with you. I mean, having, built the business of Media Mice, I felt like one of the key things that happened over the years were aspects of character building, because as you build your own character, it almost helps to level up the business in tandem. Did you find that as well?
There's so many skills to learn, and everything was just such a rush. And you're learning how to manage your practice, you learn the business side of it, you need to learn marketing part of it, you need to have leadership to lead your people, you have to create culture and so on.
What would you describe as the building blocks of a successful practice when you're starting out?
I would suggest that you work for someone first, build up your customer service skills, build up your professional skills. When I was working for people, I actually behave as if I own the practice. I relieve my employer of as much as possible. So there is already an attitude that you are running the practice. In terms of like marketing and business and all these things, you've got to learn from someone else. So I was really fortunate to join this network of business owners. They are business owners of different type of businesses. They do jewelry, they do pest control, lawyers. So it's good to surround yourself with business owners whom you can trash your ideas, you can ask them, and people like to be asked, how do you do it, and that kind of thing. I think it saves yourself from a lot of mistakes.
We're all based in the Asia Pacific region, which comes with its own unique challenges and opportunities. What are some specific challenges of opening up a practice in APAC versus, let's say, somewhere else in the world?
Each country is so different. So for example, like places like Hong Kong and Singapore where rentals are just so expensive. Whereas in Malaysia, if you choose to practice in a mall, then your rentals will be high. But if you choose to practice not in the mall, then rentals are, I would say, reasonable. But it comes with its challenges as well. If you open your practice in a mall and therefore you have traffic, and therefore it's easier to build much faster because you have so much traffic passing by if you're not in the mall, then what will happen is there's not that many, not much traffic and so on. So you will have to build it a different way. Within APAC region, people still think that, optometry is just pure selling of glasses and so on, and they don't touch on eye health. So that's the challenge. They can't see the difference between primary eye care practice versus a regular practice that dispense glasses only.
It looked like it requires a lot of investment to, have an ophthalmic clinic. Whereas an optometric clinic, you wouldn't have to invest as much going into it. You don't have the equipment like, excimer lasers, which could be $500,000. So I wonder if in a way that plays to the advantage of optometrists that might be starting out without, angel investors or what have you, because as businessmen, maybe to get started, again, it's easier to get involved in a local market. What do you think?
I didn't start with all these fancy equipments. I started with basic equipments that I could use to at least do a proper examination of the eye health. When I first started up, I bought new equipments. Had I started again, I thought, hey, some of this equipment doesn't have to be new. It has to do the job well, but it doesn't have to be new. So there would be people who have maybe your seniors or other practices who are upgrading, and therefore their older equipment, maybe it's about 3 to 4 years, which works still quite fine, and they could upload it, unload it to you for a much cheaper cost, and you can provide great service at a much lower, investment in equipment.
Moving over to the power of social media, what does that really do for your business in terms of exposure?
I'm not that young, and I noticed that those younger optometrists are so much better using TikTok, using Instagram, and so on. I try to stay relevant. So we do have someone who is, I used to do it myself, but now we outsource our Facebook marketing, Instagram marketing, and so on. I think it's just to stay abreast, to let them know that we are around. One thing that works really well is to have a good website and to do SEO and to invest in Google Ads and so on, because that's where people who are searching for eye care services and so on are going to look. I mean, you may have a fantastic practice, but if people can't find you, and that's not good,
I spoke a little bit about ophthalmology here. What kind of relationship do you have with your fellow ophthalmologists in Malaysia?
I have a very good working experience with the ophthalmologists, pretty much because we are interested in catching eye diseases from people who would not go to an ophthalmologist. Some people will feel that I don't have a red eye, I'm seeing pretty okay, it's not that blurry. There's no reason for them to go and to visit an ophthalmologist. Guess what? They do come to us for their glasses, and they do regular visits. So for example, like they come in once a year or once in every 2 years. In terms of kids, they come and visit us every 6 months. So we take that opportunity to do the whole barrage of the eye health screening. And guess what? We have managed to pick up eye diseases, which we can refer to the ophthalmologist in time. If it's in the case of cataract, we'll be able to tell our patient that this is not the time to do glasses anymore. You will be better served by an ophthalmologist. And in that sense, if we know that we can work in partnership with the ophthalmologist, they will love this relationship. Ophthalmologists are also looking for good people who can take care of their patients as well. So for example, if they have a squint or if they have something else, then they can communicate easy for us and for us to know what to do with them as well. So it's actually a very good and healthy relationships, and it's good to have. In fact, some of them you even have their private phone number in your mobile phone. Why? Because sometimes there are emergencies. And it could happen in the middle of night when your patient has something, a corneal ulcer or, a glaucoma attack and so on, or it could be the weekends. So it's good to give them a ring and say, I've got this case and so on and so forth. And they are very supportive about it.
Do you have any advice for other countries around the region in terms of helping to sustain relationships between ophthalmologists and optometrists? Because I know the heritage out there in Southeast Asia, the relationships aren't always as strong as they are in Malaysia. How can others improve those relationships?
As we build those relationships, we have a lot of dialogues. We have a lot of maybe workshops together, so the ophthalmologist knows what we do, and we also know what the ophthalmologist can do. I think as optometrists, we also have to know what are our limits as well. For example, like my case, if my patient sees an ophthalmologist, I will tell them, please continue seeing an ophthalmologist. Don't come to see me and stop seeing an ophthalmologist, because we work together. Yeah. And we have to assure the ophthalmologist that we know what we're doing and we know our limits and what we can do to support them. A lot of ophthalmologists are getting optometrists to work with them in their clinics. So by that, they can actually witness and see for themselves what the optometrists are capable of.
And around the region, which countries do you think are strong in optometry, and which countries do you think have a ways to go?
I think all of us have different levels to go to. I think Hong Kong is pretty strong. The optometrist is pretty strong. I know for sure Philippines, their level of optometry is pretty high. Those who graduate as optometrists in Singapore as well is pretty high as well. Malaysia. Indonesia has just started the optometry program, so they are coming up. I'm happy to say that Vietnam is producing optometrists, and I know quite a number of them personally, and it's such a joy to see them grow. Thailand has an optometry doctor program, so they're coming out. And they're new, not like, for example, like in Malaysia, we are easily 20 plus years old when we have started producing optometrists. I think Thailand is just pretty recent. Indonesia is pretty recent. Philippines has done it for a long time. Vietnam just did it recently. Laos has not started an optometry program yet. I think Cambodia is still some way to go. Yeah, but I may be wrong, I still need to get this. That's what I think.
Well, it sounds like a lot of ripe space for the expansion of vision-spaced optometrists. So congratulations on your clinics there in Malaysia, and we certainly welcome you out here in the world.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Mice TV at the CAKE and PIE Expo in Da Nang, Vietnam. The Asia Optometric Congress will take place November 15th to 16th in November in Kuala Lumpur. The theme for AOC 2022 is a new vision. This is a conference for all optometrists from academia, hospital, private practice, and more. Let's watch the video.
So the third Asia Optometric Congress is where we focus mainly on Asian talents. This Congress is going to be really special. Our theme is called A New Vision, happening on the 15th to 16th November 2022 at the Kuala Lumpur Convention Center. We have a lot of workshops that's lined up so that it's going to be really practical, so that when you come in, there is a lot of workshops for you to sign up, for you to learn practical nuggets, and you're going to get your hands on to do some of the procedures and so on. So you definitely leave back from the conference with things that are so practical that you can implement directly, immediately into your practices. Perhaps some of the optometrists have not seen the latest equipments for maybe the latest OCT, the latest fundus camera and how to do interpretation, the latest tonometer, the latest slit lamp and so on. Also going to be a section on myopia, about myopia management and so on. We are touching things on glaucoma, we are touching things on diabetic retinopathy. We have a big section on just vision therapy, sports vision, and we also have, scleral and hybrid contact lenses, toric multifocal contact lenses, solving problems with contact lenses, keratoconus, dry eye management. And this is super practical. I mean, you come in, it's not just seeing it on the screen, but you're seeing it. You have an opportunity to probably touch and to perform some of these things.
Welcome back. If you're a retina specialist, whether you're just getting started out or considering your own private practice or have an established practice, you're going to want to check out this next spot. We have Ken Fong with his tips on how to grow a successful retinal practice. Take it away.
Hey, Dr. Fong, welcome to the show.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for the kind invitation.
So we're sitting down with you today to talk about private practice. For all of you who missed it last year at our first CAKE and PIE Expo, Dr. Fong hosted a roundtable symposium on building and growing your ophthalmology clinic with 3 other doctors with outstanding practices around the region. A lot of the attendees last year thought it was one of the highlights of the expo. A couple weeks ago, I actually got to visit Dr. Fong's practice and see the magic in action. There were lots of really cool things to see, especially now that COVID restrictions are being lifted worldwide. So I've got to ask, Ken, how's life in our post-pandemic world for you?
We're pretty much getting back to normal, but we're being a new normal whereby a lot of precautions are taken with every patient. All masks are still on between the doctors, staff, and patients. I think, as I mentioned in the symposium last year, a modern private practice should always have electronic medical record and HIS or information system. We should strive to go green, so reduce our reliance on paper, reduce our reliance on excessive wastage. And I think, as you saw when you visit our practice, we really are very focused on that aspect as well.
Well, it's been a challenging time for everyone for sure, and really nice to at least put COVID in the rear view mirror. So I'd like to move to a topic that I hear a lot of people asking about. There's quite a lot out there about managing refractive practices, but not a whole lot about practices strong in retinal treatments like yours in KL. So what do you think are some key differences between managing and growing private retina clinics and refractive ones?
Yeah, you're right. We do focus a bit more on retina because that's what we're good at. We're also very good at refractive. And I think one of the key things is accessibility and efficiency. So we have to be able to meet the patient's expectations by having available the doctors and the staff whenever they're able to attend. Intravitreal injections are a big part of any retinal practice. So we have a very good, what we call lane or SOP protocol for handling intravitreal patients. So they need to come in, register, have their OCT scans, see the doctor, and then go ahead and do the injection and move on. So all that should be done under an hour. Efficiency is very important for any retina practice. On the other hand, a refractive practice is quite the opposite. These patients need a lot of time in counseling. They need to be explained to about the different pros and cons of any refractive procedure in them. And they often spend up to 3 hours in a clinic. So the time frame spent for retina and refractive patients is very different. Retina patients tend to be a bit older. They tend to be time sensitive. They tend to be quite urgent. So operating theatre availability is very important for them. Whereas refractive patients tend to be more selective about where they go. The ambience of the center is very important. The professionalism of the staff handling and counseling them is also very important.
Yeah, perfect. I think a lot of folks out there looking to launch a private retinal practice or even ones mixed with refractive surgery are going to find that helpful. Let's talk about one other challenge that all doctors have to deal with, which is patient education. What kind of role do you think patient education plays in the clinic? As you can see, we do a lot of educational videos posted by our doctors and optometrists. These videos are carefully curated. Multimedia is so important, as you know yourself from your work in the industry. The videos should contain a lot of factual information to guide the patient towards a decision about what they want to do about their condition. We try and have our videos in many different languages. As you know, Malaysia is a diverse country, so we try and address all those factors whenever we communicate with our patients. And of course, social media survives on video. It survives on content. Patients are not satisfied with just a simple poster or text words in your social media post. Well, given the importance of patient education, as you said, can you tell us a little bit more about the types of videos that you're creating and why? In terms of videos, it's just short 2-minute clips about common conditions, explanations, myths about surgery, education about specific conditions like macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy, common conditions, common but important to be educated on. We have a dedicated multimedia crew as well. So we're quite familiar with using all the different platforms for producing educational videos. And I can't say we are the best. I know we take a lot of examples from many other big private centers or even public centers around the world, and we learn from each other. Great. So, recently we've been running a lot of pieces in the magazine and in our social media channels about the ophthalmology optometry crossover. Can you start by explaining how you work with optometrists in your practice? Optometrists are really the front line in primary eye care in Malaysia. There's always an optometrist in your neighborhood in most of the major urban centers in Malaysia and also in the rural areas. So we engage them by having a lot of educational programs. During the COVID time, when we were under lockdown, we had a lot of Zoom meetings with them. We had a big eye care symposium last year attended by more than 1,000 delegates online. And we were very happy with our level of engagement. Of course, feedback is important. Every time an optometrist refers a patient, it's important to feedback to them about the condition and what you've done with them. We also have a lot of face-to-face symposiums. We have small workshops on specific things like corneal topography, visual fields, ocular motility, and so on and so forth. We are also moving towards professional education of ophthalmologists. So we are running a Part 2 FRC op examination course in October for exam candidates sitting the professional exams. By providing that sort of educational service, I think we're able to help elevate the level of ophthalmology and optometry practice. And let's talk a little bit about referrals, as it seems like that can be a key driver for growing a private retinal practice or refractive practice. What are some tips that you can give to those just starting out to kick up their referral network? Referrals stems a lot from relationships, and I think there has to be a large level of trust between the person referring to the specific ophthalmologist. We have to be engaged in an open relationship, open communication. I don't believe in a referral practice that rewards financially people who refer you. I don't think it's helpful for both sides, and I think many optometrists also agree with that. As long as their patients mutually benefit, they get the best possible care, I think that's the most important. Similarly, when I refer patients to make their glasses after cataract surgery, I would want to know that they're going to the best possible optometrist or optician in their neighborhood, getting the best value for money. I know Oasis Eye started up, I believe, just as the pandemic was happening, right? So what were the things or the key drivers of growth of your practice, would you say, despite the conditions?
It's word of mouth. It's the reputation of the doctors and the center that carries through in any private practice. If you run a private practice like a business, relying completely on marketing and people to promote you on TV or advertisements, I don't think it's going to survive very much. The doctors and the staff have to be extremely competent and provide a very good service to the patients. We were put on the insurance panelship of many major insurance companies within a very short space of time, which is a record in I think, Malaysia in itself. But I think that shows the level of trust the insurance companies, the patients have in us to entrust their eyesight to us. So I think reputation is very important, and every patient that comes through your practice is essential. You have to treat them very well, and you'll find that they bring their friends and family after that.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot here with some quick tips. What are the top 3 things that you wish you knew when you were just starting out with your practice?
Don't be afraid. I mean, there's always a great fear when you start out in private about what's going to happen. I think focus on the present, focus on the patient in front of you and doing the best for them. Number 2, I think, of course, believe in yourself. Quite often, doctors are very conservative people. They may prefer to be salaried by a specific group or hospital for the security. But I think we shouldn't be institutionalized. If you trust and believe in your capabilities, I believe anybody can do well in private practice. And number 3 is you wouldn't believe it, but when I joined private practice about more than 10 years ago, leaving an academic world, I thought I'll stop doing research, I'll stop doing teaching, but I'm doing that even more than ever. It's important to realize that even though you may be in private practice, but research and teaching still remains a very important part of our practice.
Well, Dr. Fong, thanks so much for joining us today. That's a lot of great info for our viewers. And it's such a critical topic for those retinal, refractive, cataract specialists who are looking to expand from the medical world to the business world. We really appreciate your insights. Really looking forward to talking to you the next time around.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Well, that was a great interview with Dr. Kenneth Fong, and he is the APAO 2023 Congress President. He's going to be promoting the upcoming Expo, or Scientific Congress. It's going to be the 30th Annual Asia-Pacific Academy of Ophthalmology Congress. It will take place in Kuala Lumpur, February 23rd to 26th, 2023. Let's watch.
Welcome back to Mice TV. We're here with Dr. Kenneth Fong, Congress President of the APAO 2023, which is destined for Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Ken, we're excited to speak with you today. Tell us a little bit about what's coming up at the APAO in 2023.
Well, we're going to have full face-to-face congress in the acclaimed Kuala Lumpur Convention Center. It's fully refurbished. There's a new wing built for the exhibition center, and I think we're very excited about that. Delegates can expect a modern, very well-curated scientific program, and of course the excellent hospitality that Malaysia always offers for conferences.
How do you think the physical meeting is going to turn out in 2023 for APAO?
The way things are looking, this will be one of the first major Asia-Pacific conferences of more than 1,000 delegates. The response has been very encouraging. We've already got about 600 registered delegates to date, and I think that will only continue to increase. The response from the industry has been tremendous. Sponsorship booths are selling like hotcakes. I'm only concerned now we may not have enough space, but that's a good problem to have. As you know, flying into Malaysia, the airports are open as normal. There's really been no hassle at all coming in and out of Malaysia.
In my experience, I feel like congresses that happen in Malaysia, Singapore, especially do very well. I could never quite pinpoint it, but I remember the APVRS in 2017 in KL was a great meeting. What do you think it is about Malaysia that provides, a really spectacular meeting environment?
So I think Malaysians by nature are very hospitable. We are quite genuine. High level of English proficiency. So a lot of international tourists and delegates have no problem at all getting around Malaysia. A lot of us also speak Mandarin, Arabic, Malay, Tamil. So these are all common languages around the Asia-Pacific region that also help for people from outside come and travel in. We are quite underrated as a destination. As you know, Thailand and Singapore are very near us and tend to have a higher profile. But I believe that we are a value for money destination, whether you're shopping or doing business in Malaysia.
Back to the meeting for a moment. Are we going to have a special theme next year?
The theme is reconnect and collaborate. So it really is about linking up between ophthalmologists and researchers and collaborating on with big research projects require a multi-center or multinational effort. And we are trying to be a forum for that as well. Many subspecialty topics. There'll be a big focus on artificial intelligence. So we have at least 6 symposiums dedicated to artificial intelligence for the different subspecialties in the ophthalmology, led by all the key leading researchers around the world. Deep learning software has been well validated and published on. In ophthalmology, especially in retinal imaging, AI software is a big help for detection of diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, AMD in a large population base that no human could possibly do. We're also going to be having joint sessions with the American Academy of Ophthalmology, and I'm proud to announce that the AAO is a co-sponsor of this APO meeting next year, and a lot of key doctors from the AAO will be coming to Malaysia, and we'll be having a couple of plenary sessions with the American doctors as well and learning from them, and they also have a lot to learn from the Asia Pacific region. So it'll be a good East meets West sort of meeting.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a great overview. We're definitely looking forward to the meeting and covering the meeting as usual. It'll be great to see you out there, Ken. Thanks for sharing.
All right, welcome back to Mice TV from the CAKE and PIE Expo 2.0. Our next segment features 2 world-renowned glaucoma experts, Dr. Sahil Thakur and Professor Indu Palkor. They have arrived in the Mice TV studio fresh from their CAKE session on There's More to Drops in Glaucoma Management. Let's welcome Dr. Thakur and Professor Palkor to the show. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Vietnam? When did you arrive?
So I came on 19th.
Okay.
Just before noon, we just checked in and then quickly went around to have a look at so many things Da Nang had to offer, and it was really beautiful, much beyond my expectations.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was really lovely.
And what about you? Have you had any time to explore any local attractions or try some local food yet?
Yeah, I think Da Nang is a beautiful place. So I came early as well. I came on the 19th. We had kept a day for Hoi An. It's a beautiful city, especially with the Lantern Festival that happens every night.
Gorgeous.
Beautiful. And then also Da Nang and the Bana Hills with the Golden Bridge. That's really beautiful as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we've talked to a lot of our visiting guests, and most people have gone to see the Golden Hand Bridge.
Yeah, the Bana Hills is definitely the favorite.
Yes.
Very Instagrammable.
All right, well, I'm going to start out with this question. I'll address this to both of you. You know, we know that glaucoma is a chronic progressive disease that steals sight, and there's challenges in managing that. Let's just talk, what are some of the main challenges that, you know, ophthalmologists do face when it comes to in managing glaucoma patients? I'll ask you first, Professor Carr.
All right. So what I think is that we already have some medicines and some surgeries going on, but now is the time when people are leaving behind the conventional options and looking for the contemporary things, and that is what the entire session on glaucoma drops was about. We had people like Sahil talking about AI and collecting it, and then we had a talk where we talked about MIGS, and then my talk, because I am a formulation scientist, and I actually wanted to talk about, there are issues like compliance. That is a very big challenge because it is being prescribed daily, and several patients are to take at least 3 to 4 drops every day, and that's a big challenge. And then the other challenge is effectiveness of the therapy, because ocular tissue is has its own anatomical and other physiochemical as well as physiological constraints to delivery. So the drug molecules which are discovered or developed for applications otherwise may not be actually effective in ocular delivery. So
Well, and I mean, and I guess this is part of compliance. I've actually seen some studies where the patients are putting their eye drops and they're missing their eye completely.
Yeah.
And they think they're getting them in their eye, and they think they're being compliant, but it's just stripped down their cheek.
There is a voluntary non-compliance and there is a non-voluntary non-compliance.
Right.
So this is all about the they want to do it right, but they don't know they are not educated, or they are unable to understand.
Or they could have other conditions that, just don't allow them. Right. Okay, well, moving on, Dr. Thakor, what about you? What do you think are some of the main challenges building on what Professor Carr said?
Yeah, I think I have a unique perspective because I have seen glaucoma care in two very different setups. So I come from India, in which glaucoma care is purely coincidental. You tend to find a glaucoma patient, you tend to treat them. Singapore has a very different approach with the use of AI. Now we are trying to have an active screening program where we can go into the population and find glaucoma patients. The problem with glaucoma initially starts because it's a silent condition. So the patient doesn't know that they have lost vision till I think there is an advanced glaucoma loss already, and then there is not much that we can do. We either have to go straight to surgery, or we have to offer them options like a combined cataract surgery with some sort of a surgical intervention.
Right.
That's why I think it's very important to address glaucoma need of care at multiple time points. That means we have to address the population as a whole by using solutions like AI imaging as well, and then address the second part, which I think every speaker always talks about in their talks, but is still missing at the ground level. That's patient education, compliance, and making sure that they properly put the drops. Because drops at the end of the day are going to be the sheet anchor for glaucoma management till we find a better solution.
Very good. So you brought up artificial intelligence, and I know that there are applications for artificial intelligence, especially in conditions like diabetic retinopathy, used in screening and trying to take the places over some of these human graders. In glaucoma care, where does AI fit into management?
Yeah, so in glaucoma care, AI comes in as something that the clinicians can use as assistants. Mostly what happens in glaucoma is it's difficult to diagnose early. That's why we have a lot of advanced imaging modalities like OCT and also OCTA these days. But the problem is interpretation of these modalities is quite difficult because one, availability of the machines is not there in resource poor countries. And the second thing is if the machines are there, there is inadequate training because in the glaucoma imaging space, the equipments come so fast, but the adoption is very slow. Right now in India, I think glaucoma is still managed just by seeing on the slit lamp without any imaging, without any visual fields as well, which is like almost very difficult to believe, but that's the truth. So that's why I think AI comes in as a clinician decision support tool. Moreover, it also offers opportunities for resource poor countries, wherein you have a low acceptability or a low acceptability for advanced technologies, but you have simple things like good imaging devices. So you could just take a simple fundus image, you could take a just simple anterior segment image, and then use AI to predict from those images either the visual fields or the anterior segment OCT parameters, and we are working on both of these issues right now in Singapore.
Okay, well that's very interesting. I know that you and we've actually talked before about some of these apps that are available. How far off in the future are these from actually maybe being put into at least trials or practice itself?
So yeah, I think the important thing here is we need more of industry involvement in this because this is something which is slow to develop, but once developed, the adoption will be very fast because right now mobile phones have become ubiquitous, and because they are ubiquitous and a few years apart, I think because the QR code scanning, like it has come up so quickly because of COVID. Similarly, I think because of the wider availability of mobile phones and the wider availability of 5G internet as well. Why? Because you need fast image upload capacities to the net because most of the AI algorithms are actually run in the cloud. So these technologies are already there. All we need is some more industry involvement, some more involvement of other partners so that these can come very quickly to the market. A lot of them are being published. A few of them have gone into the FDA approval, but none of them is currently available. And I think the gap there is probably the industry support. I think that's what is lacking right now.
Okay. Okay, well, that's very good. So now we've talked about kind of that approach to management. Let's talk about treatment now. Now, Professor Carr, during your talk at the expo, you discussed a new implant. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and where we stand?
Yeah, I think we have already some implants in the market. There is a recent approval in 2020 for even the Metoprost Sr Implant, which is an intracameral implant. But then the FDA allowed its use only once. Although people claim that once you are able to control the intraocular pressure for the initial 6 months of treatment, there could be a situation where then you can shift the patient to daily drops. But still a lot remains desirable, like probably it is the polymer use which is not appropriate. So what I suggested here in my talk was a subconjunctival implant, which is much easier to implant, and it is a totally biodegradable system like the Metoprost SR. We in the lecture after me, we had several other implants which are there in the market or in clinical trials, phase 2, phase 2A or phase 1 were also discussed by the speaker next to me. But yes, we are looking to a new era of implants, I think. And subconjunctival, why I support them, again, it was something suggested by the clinicians with whom I held some discussions. We have a larger space in the conjunctiva. The administration is easier, less risky, and the patient also feels comfortable with a subconjunctival implant. So now, maybe we'll soon have a few in the market, few more in the market.
So where is the current status of this? Are we in clinical trials now? Or?
So we have a few products, like dexamethasone implant is already there for the past 5-6 years. As I said, the Metoprost SR is there in the market, and a few are in the clinical trials.
Okay. Now, for this implant in particular, is there a certain type of glaucoma that it works to treat, or is it suited for maybe mild, moderate? Can it work in more severe cases, or is that always just straight to surgery?
So it is majorly open-angle glaucoma, which is being addressed by these implants. And there are certain situations where surgery may be advisable. I'm not the right person to suggest that here. But most of the times, people are trying to manage intraocular pressure rather than doing the surgeries or opening the trabecular pathways, or so all of these drugs they increase the aqueous humor outflow invariably by a variety of pathways.
Yeah. Very good. Well, we are getting towards the end of our interview. I'd like to ask if you'd have any other messages you'd just share with our audience when it comes to glaucoma management. And I know one of the other speakers during your symposium touched on MIGS, and we didn't have time to do it here, but maybe a couple thoughts on MIGS or other treatments in the future?
Yeah, I think I'll take that one. So MIGS is a very important solution that we have in our armamentarium. But the problem with MIGS is the availability. So the maximum glaucoma burden is in Southeast Asia, but in most of the countries, these devices are not available and not approved. What MIGS offers you is a drug-free interval for the patient. So most of the times, MIGS are not a substitute for TRAB. It's very important to understand that. You know, sometimes doctors early in their career, they start doing MIGS for every type of patient. They are not recommended for that. MIGS are only meant for early glaucoma to give the patient some drug-free interval, because drugs are the major things that can affect the ocular surface and then damage the surface of the eye. So MIGS have to be eased into the patient's psyche first, because a lot of times patients themselves do a Google search before they come to you, and they are going to tell you that this treatment can be the treatment of glaucoma can only happen with eye drops. Why are you suggesting surgery? So that's the part wherein the patient education comes in. We need very good counselors who can explain them why a surgery may be a better alternative for them. And I think that's the problem again. So affordability, availability, and how to pitch the project, that sometimes is lacking in Southeast Asia, and how we pitch it to our patients. A lot of times the patients, if you suggest surgery, they would say no.
Right.
They would
well,
straight away say no. Yeah.
And if they've seen probably a video of eye surgery online, they're even less keen.
One more thing I have to quickly
Yes,
add is that we need a partnership, maybe the physician, the patient, the formulation scientists, and the industry, all of them to come together to look at the opportunities and the options.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what we try to do at all of these congresses, bring everything together.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. And well, up next, we have an exclusive interview with Jeanette Banks. She's the president and general manager of the global surgical franchise for Alcon. During this talk, we discuss how access to eye care in Asia Pacific has improved and what has already been done. Let's roll the video.
Next up, we have Jeanette Banks. She's joining us for this segment on eye care in developing countries. Jeanette is the perfect guest. She's lived and worked in Asia Pacific and really has helped provide access to care in our region. Let's listen in. Jeanette, welcome to Mice TV. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Such a pleasure. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Well, just to get right into it, Jeanette, Alcon has some marvelous products, from advanced presbyopia correcting IOLs to visualization devices like Ingenuity. Now, do you believe innovations like these will trickle down eventually to support the developing world, even if the average patient today can't afford them?
Absolutely, Matt. We do have a wide portfolio, and we have a segment of premium products that we offer. You spoke to presbyopia correcting IOLs, but we take the same accountability around our portfolio and say, how do we actually create a bigger footprint? Is if you were questioning me and saying, what's Alcon really known for? In the OR, it's phaco development. We've been able, through a legacy of programs and products, be able to take what was a legacy strong point of the company and put it into a solution. We call it Legion, a portable system that we can deploy around the world, and it's economically feasible to all populations. There's premium market segments and there are mid or lower tier market segments, and I think Alcon's trying to address those.
Well, we've heard that Alcon was the first mover to the ophthalmology market here in Vietnam well over a decade ago. And in fact, many independent distributors here initially learned the ropes at Alcon. So what is it about the company culture itself that trains people so well to then move ahead with their careers in ophthalmology, wherever that may lead?
We have a pretty long legacy of development and training capabilities at the company. We understand that as brilliant as we make physicians in their surgical capabilities, the better we can actually serve patients. And so I'm sure you're aware of our phaco development program. We were able to get to almost 5,000 physicians in Asia Pacific to be able to train them. That really equated to over 7 million people having procedures performed in that part of the world. Is we just came out with a virtual reality capability. We're actually training physicians both in person, but virtually. We're using Oculus headsets and we're placing them into a virtual OR. And we've done development to actually teach them through haptics to do the surgery. And you can actually have a remote specialist around the world in your surgical OR with you, training you.
Orbis is an important partner for our CAKE and PIE Expo 2.0 in Da Nang, Vietnam, where this episode of Mice TV is being broadcast. Now, Orbis also is an important partner of the Alcon Foundation. So how does the Alcon Foundation go beyond commercial efforts to battle avoidable blindness and other issues like it worldwide?
So from a contribution perspective, we have two different ways. So Alcon Foundation is the monetary. We give a large amount of monetary donation to enable that. But also from a CARES perspective, our donation, we're able to provide product in a large volume free to Orbis to be able to do the surgeries around the world. We talked about Legion on the first question, a portable solution to phaco. We have a 100 mission where we donated 100 pieces of equipment into emerging markets to be able to expand phaco capabilities.
Well, meanwhile, Vietnam has roughly 200 million eyes to treat, and yet in a recent market scope categorization of the global presbyopia population, after addressing the US, Western Europe, Japan, other wealthy nations, China, India, and Latin America, Vietnam fell into a rest of the world category. Now, I imagine Vietnam falls into a rest of the world category for many companies, But it does not for Alcon, where, as I mentioned, it was the first mover. But overall, how do you think the world's ophthalmic attention can shift, practically speaking, from the US and Europe to the needs of emerging markets in Asia Pacific a little bit more quickly?
We have to start thinking about there's not rest of world. It's how do you tackle the regulatory approvals around the world? Think about, can I run clinicals that will actually open up markets that may be smaller in the world, the emerging market? You're watching Alcon think about regulatory clinical requirements to get into all markets, not just the largest markets. We were a little bit delayed into China. I think we've had over 25 product approvals into China. And if you really think about it, CFDA has mirrored some of the FDA requirements. There's subtle differences in commercially becoming available in some of these smaller markets, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Vietnam, etc. But if you're really strategic in nature, you hit both the large markets and the smaller emerging markets because you're thinking about a commercial strategy and regulatory strategy that allows everybody to get their products. So people need to be thinking about the world in scope, not just your largest markets, because you're missing some of them.
Well, if we turn to India, in 2021, the global ophthalmic market procedure volume was 14% in India, but that also only accounted for 3.2% of global ophthalmic procedure revenue. I can't help but think that makes India a country that could be commercially vulnerable given the challenges in revenue there, but at the same time, it could be an undervalued opportunity to figure out how to serve that population better. So, how do you view the challenge of developing ophthalmology further in India?
Can you, by volume as well as affordability, think about a different way? Do you take first generation technologies? Can you make them more cost effective through manufacturing technology? And if that is the case, like we've done with our phaco development, can we bring portable solutions, implantable solutions that become more cost effective? Because you're right, Matt, it's probably one of the countries that has the largest population that's going to rely on us, and they shouldn't go blind because of affordability. So we're thinking about, where do we place manufacturing? Do we have capability to reduce our own cost of goods to support the greater economic challenges around the world? We've been in India for a while, but we were a premier company that's starting to think about taking that premium technology and bringing an affordable phaco, custom pack, monofocal offering to be able to support the whole world. And yes, it's an important market and growing for the company.
Yeah, I was reading the other day that, the Fred Hollows Association really helped to introduce eye care in Vietnam in the early 90s, in terms of ophthalmology. As you're talking about the 2000s, these are all early territories still for the advancement of ophthalmic care, and it's great to hear you talk about it.
You can't take the American or European way of doing practices or practice management. And when you start to think about that, that's when you start to frame up what is the solutions, or solutions, plural, that we need to come up with. Portability, affordability. When you start thinking about that, you can play effectively into a mid-tier segment, but you can't take your premium offerings and think that everybody has the same surgical ORs in the US as they do in Europe and have that luxury. And clinics rotate. So, you need a portable clinic to go to a town, not the town that can afford a clinic. That's what's making us successful at Alcon, is thinking differently on how they operate day-to-day versus some of the markets we play in currently.
Very good. Well, the biggest ophthalmology shows in the world still happen in America and Europe, and yet Asia Pacific often accounts for greater growth. Do you think a shift will ever happen such that Asia Pacific hosts the largest shows in ophthalmology?
Absolutely. As you start to see large industry players like us, like some of our peers, come into that region, you will see higher presence. There's a larger amount of hyperopes in that area, presence of myopia. You think about China, they've named it the third most important thing to try to tackle in China because of what's happening there. You will see a time when all the large companies, I talked about the number of filings we did, as we start to increase our presence, you will also see APAC become a very large focus for all large players in ophthalmology.
Over time, I've noticed through my personal relationships that many of those that work in our field care very much about healthcare. So do you have any personal stories that translate well to caring about the underserved or at the margins of our society in terms of their vision?
At the core of my foundation, I came from very humble beginnings. So at the core of my foundation is, you'll watch me always put a hashtag pay forward. Myself, my husband, my children have a deep-rooted philosophy that we were blessed to be where we are. I'm very involved in ASCRS's foundation, both from a professional, but also personal donation, being able to do eye care in South Africa. We both do it personally from a physical, go visit, help, scrub in. I can't actually do the procedure, not MD, to actually ensuring that the Holland Foundation, my husband and I were just in California supporting Ed Holland on his need to start a foundation because we're taking young kids. It was a young boy that we saw that would have needed a corneal transplant and can't afford it. So the last that I'm probably passionate about is paying forward to scientists, young females, underserved minorities. My husband and I personally donate, help support 2 African-American females going after being an engineer, STEM background. So we're both trying to help the patient personally, professionally, time, money, and energy to actually putting people into college that are going to study and help the world be a better place from an innovation perspective. It's all I know because in my lifetime, people have been gracious enough to give to me from the humble beginnings I came from. So I have a hashtag pay for mentality. It's who I am and it's all that I know. So I smile because it goes to the core of who I am.
Well, Jeanette, you've been the perfect guest here today, sharing with us about Asia Pacific, Africa, the Americas and beyond, and we're so blessed to have you. Thank you very much for joining and sharing with us on this inaugural series of Mice TV.
Thanks, Matt. Such a pleasure, and thank you for what you're doing around the world to better eye care.
Well, that was a great interview with Jeanette Banks of Alcon, if I do say so myself. Anyway, thought I'd get into a little bit what happened to me 2 weekends ago, by the way, and that is I went to attend the Asia Pacific Glaucoma Congress in Kuala Lumpur. It was really Southeast Asia's first eye care conference post-pandemic, and walking around I saw lots of friendly, familiar faces and thought I'd pop in to check out the innovations at the different booths. So without further ado, let's go through some of those innovations in the glaucoma space for Asia Pacific. First up, I popped into the Topcon booth, which mentioned that its NW500 non-mydriatic retinal camera is coming out soon commercially. It is said to be reliable, it has sharp quality imaging, and it has other enhanced capabilities. So of course, I took a photo of my own retina right here. Hopefully everything looks okay. If it doesn't, ophthalmologists, I don't want to know. Nah, just kidding. You can tell me, message me, let me know. Okay. All right. So next up is Alcon's Luxor Revalia enhanced microscope on display. And clearly it was helping to support visualization of its new Hydrus device for glaucoma. I noticed a large crystal clear optics really enhancing the visualization of the minute device, making it look extremely feasible to implant Hydrus exquisitely. Well done, Alcon. Next up, we've got Elix's Tango Reflex device looking good. It provides multimodality as a YAG and SLT laser. We also witnessed under the Lumibird parent company, Quantel Medical's Vitra 810 providing GLASS, or glaucoma laser-assisted solutions. These include a first-line treatment of SLT, a second-line treatment of subcyclo, and even a last resort treatment of thermocyclo. Yes, interesting indeed. Next up, the Paul glaucoma implant. Sounds so friendly. Paul, hi. Hi, Paul. Well, anyway, it's straight out of Singapore, manufactured by Advanced Ophthalmic Innovations. We're looking at a micro-sized tube and optimized end plate design and advanced device composition. The device has received the CE mark, so it's definitely something to keep your eye on. Next up, we've got Johnson & Johnson, which doesn't play much in the glaucoma space, but they did have a small exhibit to showcase the Veritas next generation phacoemulsification system. This was, after all, the first major eye care conference post-pandemic in Southeast Asia, and they were hoping to catch some cataract surgeons to say hi to. Veritas is designed with patient safety, surgeon efficiency, and comfort in mind. It enables less surge, more stability, intelligent occlusion sensing technologies, exquisite phaco efficiency, and surgeon-focused ergonomics. Now, my friends at All Eyes also were present at the APGC. It has a great VR device for visual field testing, and it not only functions superbly, it looks superb. I mean, can you imagine hooking that up in a slick clinic? Wowzers, guys. Well, that's pretty much a wrap for my APGC KL report. I hope you enjoyed. What do you think, Matt?
Well, certainly jealous that you got to go to KL.
Yeah.
Very lucky. It's definitely one of my favorite food cities. Did you get some delicious nasi lemak?
I think I had a burger.
Oh, Matt Young. Well, everybody, this brings us to the end of our very first Mice TV live coverage at the CAKE and PIE Expo here in Da Nang, Vietnam. But before we go, I think there's many things to say. First of all, I think Brooke and I both would like to thank the video team. Wynn, you guys can't see them, but they have been amazing. Chris McBride, our creative director, invaluable insights and incredible work. Co-host Brooke, Matt Young for putting it all together. And of course, we'd like to thank, I think on behalf of all of us here, the viewers. We really hope you enjoyed our foray into what we think is the new generation of conference coverage and ophthalmic and optometric coverage. So for all of you out there in the optometry and ophthalmic world, stay classy.
We'll see you soon.